It's hard to be breaking up with somebody and have to have breakfast with them the next morning. It's like you just want to leave town. Do you know who I am? Of course, I am no one. One sentence that may sound simple, but it reveals an entire truth behind a life that has never been fully told. At nearly 76 years old, Stevie Nicks, once hailed by the world as the Queen of Rock, now lives a quiet life, far from the stage lights, carrying memories no one dares to revisit. She once stood in the center of glory, yet felt the deepest loneliness. She once loved with everything she had, only to walk away in silence. She gave her soul to music, only to lose the most precious parts of being a woman. And her timeless songs lie quiet decisions, unnamed losses, and decades of hidden chapters. This is not just a biography. This is an untold journey of a woman who turned every heartbreak into art, and now lives a reality more sorrowful than anyone ever imagined. I think in the old days, people probably put opium in it. Opium souls are not drawn to music from grand stages, but from the silent draws of a childhood filled with loneliness and ache. Stevie Nicks was one of those souls, a girl born in quiet, raised among constant change, and who learned early on to turn solitude into melody. Stevie was born on May 26, 1948 in Phoenix, Arizona, into a family of 4 that seemed peaceful, but was always on the move, just like the stormy fate that would follow her in years to come. In that home, love, invisible boundaries, and unspoken expectations quietly shaped a sensitive heart that learned day by day to endure, to dream, and to stay gentle in the midst of cracks no one could name. Stevie was the eldest daughter of Jess Nicks, a successful businessman, former executive president of Armour Meat Company and director at Greyhound, and Barbara Nicks, a compassionate and deep-thinking elementary school teacher who strongly valued independence and female agency. The Nicks family also had a son, Christopher Nicks, Stevie's only brother, a quiet soul who didn't pursue the arts but remained a rare emotional support for Stevie during her stormiest years. Her childhood was marked by impermanence. Because of her father's job, the family moved constantly, from Arizona to New Mexico, from Utah to California. These unending relocations planted in Stevie a deep sense of instability, that nothing in life is truly permanent, and that emotions are perhaps the only thing that stay real, even when everything else fades away. Only able to form lasting friendships, Stevie grew up in solitude. She withdrew, absorbing the world more through emotion than conversation, and gradually, music became her only refuge. It wasn't a pastime, it was an escape, the only space where she didn't have to twist herself to fit in, a soft, truthful place, like a small umbrella in the middle of a childhood storm. By age 5, Stevie had already fallen under the spell of classic country songs, played and sung by her grandfather, Aaron Jess, a J. Nicks. He was the first to plant the musical seed in her heart, the only one in the extended family who believed the little girl carried something different in her eyes and her hums. Under the bright, arid sun of the Arizona desert, the two played music together. Simple notes, innocent voices. What seemed like play would later prove to be destiny. Though she didn't grow up in an artistic household, Stevie was fortunate to receive encouragement just when she needed it. Her mother, Barbara, never forced her to conform. She taught Stevie to be a self-sufficient woman, to never live in someone's shadow to earn her worth. You don't need to be someone's wife to feel valuable. You can be yourself, whole, strong, and worthy. Those words stayed with Stevie for life, like a guiding wind that helped her stand tall amid storms named sacrifice and societal judgment. Her father, Jess, on the other hand, represented a different figure, rational, disciplined, full of expectations. She taught Stevie that nothing in life comes free, and that success demands suppressing emotion to move forward. This contrast between her parents, her mother's emotional strength, and her father's stern logic, created the inattention that became the very foundation of Stevie's character. Soft but unyielding, quiet but fiercely determined. Her teenage years were a quiet, personal quest. While other girls dreamed of prom dresses, Stevie wrote imaginary breakup letters in her notebook. Heartbreaks she hadn't yet lived, but could feel with aching clarity. Music didn't come to her from joy. It arrived from a sadness carved deep into her spirit, as if she had been born with a heart already grieving something unnamed. Heart didn't arrive with fireworks, but slipped into her life during what seemed like an ordinary afternoon at Menlo Atherton High School. That's when she met Lindsey Buckingham, a boy with distant, melancholic eyes, as if carrying the same silent tune within. The moment they sang together for the first time, no one in the class noticed, but something strange happened between them. The voices merged, emotions intertwined, as if the melodies inside them had been silent all along, waiting for this very moment to be heard. It wasn't just harmony, it was the collision of two souls in search of the same unnamed path. No one could have guessed that a string of tiring relocations, her grandfather's soft guitar strums, her mother's unwavering gaze, and one destined moment in a music class would all come together to birth a singular artistic soul. And Stevie, with all her quiet heartbreaks, began to write the song of her life, with solitary low notes, unsung melancholy phrases, and a heart that never stopped trembling at the gentle absences and subtle imbalances that life always seemed to leave behind. Before becoming an icon for an entire generation, Stevie Nicks was just a dreamy girl, stepping into the world of music with nothing but empty hands. No fame, no connections, only a heart burning with desire, and a fragile dream carried into the dazzling chaos of a city called Los Angeles. In a place where the spotlight had never once called her name, Stevie learned her first lesson that not every voice is heard and not every soul born for music is welcomed. Even with all the passion and effort she carried, the road ahead was quickly lined with thorns, and her earliest dreams would soon collide with harsh reality. The debut album, Buckingham Nicks, released in 1973, was brutally rejected by the industry. Not a single track aired, no television appearances, no record deal. It wasn't just a commercial failure, it was a devastating dismissal of an artist's yearning to be heard. While Lindsey Buckingham spent sleepless nights in the studio, Stevie quietly worked as a waitress and cleaned the houses of the wealthy in Los Angeles. Repetitive tasks bent backs behind doors that would never be hers, just to keep a fragile dream alive against the weight of a cruel reality, and every night, as the city drifted to sleep, she would sit alone under dim light, writing songs as if piecing together the shattered corners of her soul. No one knew her, no one listened, no one believed that a legend was quietly taking shape, born from the most silent pain of a young woman desperately clinging to hope at the bottom of life's abyss. In 1975, a miracle came when Mick Fleetwood stumbled upon their demo and invited both Stevie and Lindsey to join Fleetwood Mac. It seemed like the beginning of a fulfilled dream, but every light casts a shadow. Success came too quickly. The album Rumors sold over 40 million copies and became a timeless symbol. Yet behind the scenes was a private hell filled with conflict, betrayal, and prolonged heartache. Stevie and Lindsey were no longer lovers, harmonizing sweetly, but two broken souls pouring every drop of pain into their songs. The tracks on the album weren't just melodies, they were farewells, battles in disguise, bleeding emotions that the world would never fully understand. Every performance was not just a show, it was Stevie reliving unhealed wounds, trapped in a loop of silent anguish and unresolved longing. In 1981, Stevie launched her solo career with Belladonna, hoping to be recognized as an independent artist. Even when the album reached #1 on Billboard, critics still sidelined her, labeling her a short-lived phenomenon, or merely Fleetwood Mac's shadow. People admired her mystical image and stage presence, but failed to see the bleeding heart behind every lyric she wrote. The non-stop schedule between band commitments and solo work drained Stevie completely. She often collapsed in the studio, overwhelmed by the relentless pace and invisible pressures. Yet instead of empathy, the media stamped her as a party queen, as if a woman had no right to be exhausted while succeeding. By the mid-1980s, the golden glow began to fade. Albums like The Wild Heart and Rock a Little couldn't recreate the magic of the past. In 1994, Street Angel arrived, scattered, uninspired, and widely seen as the lowest point of Stevie's career. Producers lost interest, the market moved on, and the woman who once stood at the top was now being quietly forgotten in the very world she had helped shape. That was the real abyss, not loud or scandalous, but a brutal silence, a light dimming in a room without an audience. Yet Stevie Nicks did not fade. When everyone thought her journey had ended, she returned unexpectedly in 2001 with Trouble in Shangri-La, an album filled with reflection and longing, as if she had risen from the ashes to write a new chapter with hands no longer trembling. From then on, Stevie continued touring, writing and collaborating with younger generations, to chase fame, but to hold on to herself. A small role in American Horror Story introduced her to a new generation, not as a forgotten figure, but as a living cultural icon. In 2019, she made history by becoming the first woman ever to be inducted twice into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a final response to years of being underestimated. But not all abysses live on stage, and not all wounds show up on charts or glittering tours. Some pain never heals, and some memories never fade, even when you stand before thousands cheering your name. At nearly 76 years old, Stevie Nicks still stands, not just as a musical icon, but as a living testament to the souls that have been worn thin by the very dreams they refuse to abandon. Because there are sorrows no one sees, and those, not glory, are what truly shape a legend who never bows. The spotlight was never bright enough to reveal every fracture in a soul long burdened by love and loss. For Stevie, glory was never just a reward. It was a price paid in solitude, sleepless nights, and the kind of love that could never be salvaged. Even that proud smile adores no one gets to open. Choices that haunt her to this day, and the journey ahead will no longer be a song, but an echo of memories, of loss, and of wounds that never spoke aloud. So, I'm putting this song out, and I'm loving putting it out, because I do think people are listening to it. Stevie Nicks' life is not just a brilliant musical journey, but a symphony filled with deep, sorrowful notes, where every pain and every loss is etched in her soul like an unhealed scar. Behind the dazzling stage lights is a woman who has weathered countless storms, and from those storms the most poignant melodies were born. These are not songs for mere entertainment. They are the cries from a heart that has shattered many times, the echoes of a soul pushed to the very edge of endurance. Stevie didn't just sacrifice her time and health for the spotlight. She also had to pack away her simplest dreams, a peaceful love, a complete family, in order to continue as an artist. The losses she has endured are not easily understood by those on the outside. They are hidden behind the stage lights, beneath layers of makeup and glittering costumes. But it is those unseen wounds, those silent scars, that seep into every lyric, every note, and in them, music becomes not just a passion, but the only way she can keep breathing. Her first love with Lindsey Buckingham was not just the beginning of a series of tragedies that Stevie would carry for the rest of her life. It was a love that burned intensely, passionately, but also filled with wounds that would never heal. When that relationship crumbled, Stevie didn't just lose a lover, she lost the person who had been her companion during the first days of chasing the dream of music. The song Go Your Own Way, though it took the form of music, felt like a cold cut, reminding her of the moment everything fell apart. While the world saw her as stronger than ever, she quietly picked herself up from the wreckage, with a heart that would never heal again. The song Dreams was born during that time, and it wasn't a dream, but a self-reflection filled with longing, regret, and quiet sorrow. It wasn't a glimmer of hope. It was a whisper in the dead of night, from a person who had lost more than she ever thought she could trade. Her feelings for Mick Fleetwood didn't bring the salvation she once hoped for. It was a relationship that had to remain hidden, where love occurred in silence and torment. Every moment spent together made Stevie feel like she was denying herself. That connection didn't free her. She had only placed another mask over her true self, until, when looking in the mirror, she no longer knew what she was living for, or who she was living for. And then, just when it seemed her life might take a different turn, when she carried a tiny life inside her, Stevie was faced with a decision no one ever wants to make. In those years, when her career was at its peak, she realized that she couldn't hold on to everything. That difficult decision left an emptiness within her that could never be named. It wasn't just a loss, but a part of herself that would never return. That regret, though no one ever spoke of it, always smoldered in her heart like a quiet scar that never healed. But perhaps the most harrowing challenge Stevie ever faced did not come from the stage lights, nor from the broken loves, but from the ongoing battle with her own mind, a place where no one could see, no one could enter, and no one could save her except herself. The habits she once clung to like a lifeline slowly became chains, pulling her deeper into a murky silence where day and night had no boundaries, where everything seemed to slip out of her control. Throughout her journey of facing countless losses, there were times when Stevie found herself adrift, in a nameless darkness, where emotions were frozen, where joy became a stranger, and even her true self felt like it was slipping away. Endless, sleepless nights followed one another, and the never-ending tours became a cruel cycle she could not escape. Between the dazzling lights and the roaring applause, there stood a woman who had been on the brink of collapse countless times and wasn't always sure she could come back. People saw Stevie Nicks as captivating, strong, a symbol that could never fall, but no one knew that in order to have that moment of brilliance, she had fallen countless times in silence, picking herself up from the emotional wreckage. Every time she stepped on stage, she wore a cloak of glory, though inside she was a soul that was falling apart, struggling to not be consumed by her own darkness. Every song she wrote was like a slice of her soul, not to tell of glory, but to whisper about the things that had never been spoken. And through it all, the greatest pain, the loss that cannot be named, still clung to her, never letting go. Despite the millions of people applauding below the stage in Stevie's heart, there was always an emptiness that nothing could fill. Time doesn't just erode the mind, it also silently drains the life from her body. Her reliance on drugs in the past to fight off mental exhaustion left Stevie's body severely worn down. There were times when she couldn't distinguish between the pain in her body and the fatigue in her soul, because both merged into one, suffocating her each day. She once said those years felt like living inside a shell, beautiful, glittering, but empty, cold, like a body without a soul. And the most frightening part was that she still had to step on stage, still had to smile, still had to sing, while inside she was breaking apart piece by piece. Music became the only bridge that connected her to herself. It was not just an escape, but the place where she buried the most tragic parts of her life. And so Stevie Nicks continued to sing, not to be worshipped, but to keep breathing, to keep existing in a world where she could never fully be herself. From the ruins of her brokenness, from the depths of pain, she slowly rose above the darkness, becoming a symbol that could never fade from the memories of all those who had touched her music and her soul. Stevie Nicks is not only a music legend, but also a woman with a compassionate heart and immense influence. Behind the glowing spotlight, Stevie Nicks has not just stayed in the role of an artist. She has used her influence to spread love and empathy. From founding Stevie Nicks's Band of Soldiers, to help veterans recover emotionally through music, to participating in campaigns supporting the homeless, refugees, and Parkinson's patients, these actions were not loud, not showy, but they quietly added light to the spiritual legacy Stevie has left to the world. A heart that understands, and a soul that constantly fights for healing, not only for herself, but for those who are lost in the darkness of their own lives. Stevie did not become a legend because she was stronger than others, but because she dared to walk forward, despite a heart full of wounds. She does not sing to be praised, but sings to never lose herself. It is this very thing that has made millions of people see themselves in her. Those who have been weak, those who have been in pain, those who have lost hope for tomorrow, suddenly finding comfort in every word, every melody she has written. Stevie Nicks is proof that true art does not come from perfection, but from brutal honesty with pain. She is not afraid to expose her scars, not hiding her stumbles, and that is what makes her a timeless symbol, not just of a famous woman, but of a resilient soul in a world full of change. She is the first woman to be inducted twice into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, once with Fleetwood Mac and once as a solo artist. But that glory has never overshadowed the poetry within her, the poetry of an artist who never forgets to listen to her heart. From grand stages to lonely studios, from the bright lights to moments of collapse, Stevie Nicks has always remained herself. Fragile yet strong, vulnerable yet never giving up. And it is from all of this that she has not only written timeless music, but also redefined what it means to be a woman of courage in the world of art. Not needing to scream, not needing to prove anything, just being true to herself. And that alone is enough to leave an imprint on the hearts of all generations. And today, at nearly 76 years old, Stevie Nicks continues to contribute to music. Although she no longer performs as frequently as before, she remains a living legend, loved and admired by those who appreciate music. She continues to inspire, not only through her melodies and lyrics, but also through her life story, a story of resilience, love, and the power of music. Stevie Nicks' life is not a gentle ballad. It is an epic anthem, soaked in tears, steeped in sorrowful lows, and soaring with soulful highs. From the heights of fame to the depths of her own mind, from the brilliance of stage lights to the darkness within. She walked through it all barefoot as an artist who refused to surrender. Stevie isn't perfect. She's honest, she's raw, she's brave, and perhaps it is that very truthfulness that allows millions of people across generations to find pieces of themselves in her haunting lyrics, in that raspy, emotion-laden voice, and in a heart once shattered, but never incapable of love. Stevie Nicks didn't just leave behind music. She left a message that pain can become beauty, but vulnerability is not defeat, and that living truthfully, just as you are, is already a way to touch eternity. And when that voice rises again, whether through a tiny headphone or echoing from a grand stage, we realize Stevie never truly left. She's still here, in the music, in the memories, and in the hearts, still searching for healing,